Hey everyone, welcome back to another edition of the Deep Cover Podcast. Unfortunately, we missed last week, had a little bit of technical difficulties, sadly, where the audio was corrupted on the episode, so that unfortunately is lost to time. But we are back and ready to talk a little NBA free agency. I always say that the NBA and the NFL as well are 12-month sports in the sense that even when it's the quote unquote off season, you're still having a lot of movements, the draft, you're scouting, you're signing free agents, you're making trades. It's all part of the machine of the NBA and the NFL that just keeps on going and going and going, right? So for somebody like me, it's great because there's always something to talk about. But this past week, NBA free agency kicked off, the moratorium officially lifted, and teams were able to make trades and sign players and do all this stuff. And as is normal in the NBA, we had a lot of movement. So let's kind of get into it. I want to kind of go through a bunch of the deals, what they mean, and stuff like that. But I kind of want to go through a few of the extension stuff and kind of lump them in as one. So a lot of teams signed their guys to long-term extensions to kind of keep them in-house, and typically this is their star players. So let's start with the world champion Boston Celtics. They signed Jason Tatum, their franchise player, to a max extension worth 5 years, 314 million. Boston in general has brought back everybody. Xavier Tillman, Derek White, everybody's being brought back. Drew Holiday's back, Porzingis is back. They just won the title. They're gonna reload. They're gonna keep it moving, and that's really it for the Celtics, right? You had to bring Tatum back after he won the title. There's no way around it. He's your franchise player. You could say he's maybe not better than Jaylen Brown in certain moments, but he's a franchise player, right? And when you have that, you keep him around as much as you possibly can, unless he demands a trade, and he has no reason to because they just won the title. Let's go to the team they beat in the Eastern Conference second round, the Cleveland Cavaliers. They re-signed Donovan Mitchell, 3 years, 150 million max extension with Cleveland. Now, this one is interesting because the national media for a number of months has said that the worst kept secret in the NBA is that Donovan Mitchell wants to leave Cleveland. But here's what kind of is the issue, right? The whole thing was that they wanted, or that Mitchell wanted, his camp wanted him to be in New York. Once Jalen Brunson elevated with the Knicks, that became kind of a not going to happen situation because there'd be too much repetition between him and Brunson. So, okay, then you go to Brooklyn. Well, Brooklyn's not really in a position to compete for titles right now. Why would you want to do that? And you think, okay, maybe Miami. And Miami, I think, has been a little bit shied away by this first apron stuff that's kind of colored the entire narrative around how free agency has been handled this season. So they're out. And they have their own Jimmy Butler problems to figure out. There's a question, is he going to be traded? Is he going to stay with the team? And so on. So the best move for him is to stay in Cleveland. And he gets his money. At the end of this deal, he'll have that 10 years service check mark hit, so he could get an even bigger contract in a few years. And for that gives Kenny Atkinson the security. It probably is why the team went ahead and hired Johnny Bryan as associate head coach from the Knicks, who's very close to Mitchell from his days in Utah. And Cleveland's going to try to run it back. Remains to be seen if they're going to make any other moves here. If they're going to try and flip Jared Allen for something, I think that will probably be a decent idea because you really want to be able to let Evan Mobley blossom into a great pro, and you wonder if there's a little bit of restraint there when it comes to the existence of Allen and Mobley on the front line in Cleveland. All right, let's go to out west. LeBron James, the Lakers, signs a 2-year extension. So it was reported at first $104 million. That's his max that he was eligible for because he's over the age of 35. And there is specific rules about not being able to offer long-term deals to older players just because of how that's blown up in people's faces over the years. But James took a little bit less to keep the team under the first apron, so they still have further maneuverability. There was rumors that they were waiting to see what Klay Thompson would do. And if he wanted to sign with the Lakers, LeBron would take even less. That didn't happen. We'll get to Klay Thompson a little bit later. And as a result, he's back. The Lakers surprisingly quiet this offseason. Again, I think it's because they wanted to avoid the apron, right? So They bring back everybody they had last year with the exception of Torian Prince, who's left. They bring in Dalton Connect, a rookie out of Tennessee with the 17th pick. They bring in Bronny James, LeBron's son, and with their second round pick, and they're hoping that they could just progress another step. You have the expiring contracts of D'Angelo Russell and Christian Wood on the books. So you're hoping that maybe you flip those guys at the deadline, if you feel like you're just a step away. But I think more than anything, the Lakers right now are a team that's kind of in a weird kind of predicament, right? They still want to compete because they have LeBron James, they have Anthony Davis, they have two superstar players who are still producing like superstars. They also don't know when the bottom's going to fall out on LeBron. At the end of, they say Father Time is undefeated, right? He's going to be 40 in December, and how it make you just wonder how much longer can he go before the body really starts breaking down, before injuries start to happen more. He's already kind of taken multiple steps back defensively, just can't keep up on that side of the floor like he used to back when he was in Miami or even 2016 in Cleveland. And, you're in a situation where you kind of don't want to mortgage all of your future because you just don't know when the bottom's going to fall out here. So they've kind of retained a lot of their draft capital. They've retained guys like Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura, guys who are in their mid to late 20s that still have, in their eyes, a lot of value in this league. So I'd be keeping an eye out on the Lakers and seeing how that whole situation develops. I think LeBron is kind of content at this point. He's really just focused on being in LA, keeping his family there, and playing basketball with his son, which is what he now gets to do. Let's go to Orlando. So the Magic offer a 5-year max contract extension, rookie extension to Franz Wagner. 5 years, $224 million. If he hits bonuses and different types of team achievements, that goes up to $269 million. It's a lot of money, right? Scotty Barnes just got paid. We'll get to him right after this. And that's just the going rate. You're hoping, if you're Orlando, that the three-point shooting from last year was just a misnomer, that he's going to return to form. And they have a nice young core here. Him, Banchero, Markelle Fultz still there, Cole Anthony's still there. They re-signed Jonathan Isaac. They brought back Franz's brother, Mo Wagner. They have a lot of interesting young pieces, and I feel like they're only going to get better. As Banchero and Wagner get better and get more experience in the NBA, you could see them maybe win some playoff series here. I think they're really close this year to beating Cleveland in the Game 7, but it didn't work out that way. And I think that they're just looking at it as like, we're just going to keep on building and growing. And that's how we're going to compete for titles down the road here, and taking the slow approach more so than the win now approach, right? All right, so that is going to cover... Well, I'm sorry, I forgot one more. So Scotty Barnes, Emmanuel Quickley. Both are re-signed by the Raptors, and the Raptors have put in a lot of money into Barnes, Quickley, and RJ Barrett. These are the three pieces of their rebuild. Are they going to be there for the duration of their contracts? Maybe not. But for right now, as they are going to trying to find the next wave of Toronto players, in the post Kawhi era, in the post Siakam and Anunoby era now, they are going to try and stay competitive. They're going to build around this young core. It seemed like Toronto, when they made the trade with the Knicks in the trade deadline, that brought in Barrett and Quickley and sent out Anunoby, and before that with Indiana, when Siakam got sent out there, the Pacers are the Raptors are super interested in players that they could develop a little bit more, but are really competent right now. That's what they get with these guys. Barnes is elevating. He needs to work on the shot, but he's elevating. Quickley is shown to be an adequate starting guard in this league. And, they're going to try and, in a couple years, probably vie for playing spots, right? And who's to say they can't get there this year, assuming the three guys stay healthy. So, to be determined there in Toronto. So, we mentioned Anunoby. Knicks made a lot of moves this offseason. Two big ones, right? The first is they re-signed OG Anunoby. 5 years, $212 million to stay in New York. If you're the Knicks, you don't trade those two young assets and not re-sign the guy, right? It was imperative, priority number one with a bullet, that they re-sign OG Anunoby. In the very short sample size. We had 12 games where Anunoby, Brunson, and Julius Randle were on the court together. They were 11-1. They blew out the Nuggets. They beat the Wolves. They blew out the Sixers, right? They were looking like a championship contender at that time. So when you've seen that, you got to keep the guy. There's no way around it, right? You got to keep him in-house and prevent a team like Philly, who was very interested in getting him, from acquiring him, right? So on top of that, the Knicks also made a trade with Brooklyn, which is crazy to think about because they haven't traded since 1983. 41 years since they made a trade. So the Knicks send 5 first-round picks, a couple seconds out to Brooklyn. They get Mikal Bridges. There's been a couple of machinations there. Shake Milton was added as a sign-and trade part of the deal. Bojan Bogdanovic is sent as part of the deal. The Knicks get Keita Bates-Diop in return there. But the real thing is a bunch of draft picks for Mikal Bridges. So let's look at it from both angles here. The Nets have realized they are going nowhere right now, right? They lost KD, they lost Kyrie. It's another superstar situation that kind of blew up in their face, right? They lost James Harden. And they weren't going to be competing for championships with only Mikal Bridges. And you could probably talk yourself into, well, you could bring in Donovan Mitchell. You get Mikal and Donovan. What happens there? Probably 6th in the East. 5th in the East, maybe. You're not getting to a conference championship there, right? That's probably the calculation that Sean Marks and the Nets front office made. So when you have that in mind, it's like, all right, well, we got to start over. So, and they got their pick back from Houston. That was part of the Harden trade. They made a deal with Houston before the Bridges trade. And then they get a bunch of New York unprotected picks. 4 unprotected picks stretching from next year all the way to 2031. So they have long-term pick capital that they can use as ammunition for future trade. So their rebuild is fully underway. They re-signed Nick Claxton. They'll probably be giving Cam Thomas a bunch of minutes. I would expect Brooklyn to be really bad this year, but they're going to be building towards the future. I think the 2025 and 2027 Knicks picks, not likely to be very good. But when you get that to 2029, which is 5 years out, which who knows what's going to happen there, and 2031, they're fully unprotected. So that's a massive asset to have if you're the Nets, and a massive asset that could be used in trade pieces for a star that wants out eventually. Let's say Joel Embiid doesn't work out in Philly this year. Let's say he wants out. You have those picks now that are tremendous ammunition to get the player that you want in Brooklyn, again, to compete for the back page headlines with the Knicks. On the Knicks side, they've basically doubled down and tripled down and quadrupled down on their team culture, the whole Nova Knicks thing. You know, Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson, Dante DiVincenzo, obviously all very close with Mikal Bridges. It's probably been one of the worst kept secrets in the NBA that they all want to play with each other, and now they're getting that wish. The Knicks have looked at Boston, and they've said, that's what we want to do. We want 2 high-level wings that can score and defend. We want a lot of three-point shooting, and we want good rim protection. The Knicks give you every single aspect of that now, just as Boston has on their team. You get Bridges, who could shoot the 3. You get Anunoby, who's one of the best corner three-point shooters in the league. You bring back Julius Randle, who is a threat from 3 and could get downhill and get to the basket. You have Jalen Brunson, same thing. You have Mitchell Robinson that you've retained, who is a great interior presence. And Anunoby, who could guard 1 through 5 as well. Mikal Bridges is very switchable on defense. He can guard multiple positions also. You wonder about Brunson and Randle defensively, of course. Brunson will still get you some of those charges, but the effort from Randle has been questionable at times. So you're wondering, can that all mix? But on paper, it seems like they see the window, they see the opportunity right now. The Knicks, I think, internally felt like they could hang with Boston as constructed if they were fully healthy, right? And they think that they could get to an NBA Finals. They go after Mikal Bridges, and some may say, wow, that's a lot of draft capital for a role player, which it is, but you're going to pay a tax when dealing with your crosstown rival. Think about the Clippers and Lakers ever wanted to make a deal. Whoever was sending away the better player, they're probably going to want a king's ransom because they know what it means to give a player to the other team who plays in the same city, right? So the price is the price. I think right now the Knicks have one of the stronger rosters in the East and have a lot going for them heading into this coming season and over the next few seasons. all these guys still in their athletic primes, on their mid to late 20s, every single one of them. And so you could imagine, pending injury and stuff, you're going to have a good team here for a number of years. Let's talk about a former Knick real quick. Isaiah Hartenstein, who was a couple years ago was signed by the Knicks for on a 2-year, $16 million deal. It really wasn't a lot of money. And Hartenstein was, a kind of a budding journeyman, right? You never knew what he was really going to become. He turned into a really good center in New York, turned into a good rim protector, has this little push shot floater that was damn near automatic, turned into an excellent rebounder. And you knew he was going to be heavily sought out on the market. The Knicks could only offer him 4 years, $72 million. The Thunder blew that out of the water with the 3-year, $89 million offer. And, he signs with OKC. And if you're Hartenstein, it's a win-win. You go from a team that was probably going to contend for a title to a team that is definitely contending for a title in OKC. They have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the budding star of Jalen Williams. They just got rid of Josh Giddey, but brought in Alex Caruso. That is a win now for the playoffs defensively move. And when you're watching them this past year, you said, hey, they got just about everything, but the rebounding might kill them. Likely lost that series to Dallas because of a few missed rebounds, right? You have Isaiah Hartenstein now. Less likely that you miss those rebounds. He takes some of the abuse away from Chet Holmgren and allows Shai to be connected with Jalen Williams. Hartenstein's an amazing passer out of the post, something that maybe a lot of people overlooked in his time in New York. So I look at this deal, Thunder getting more dynamic. The 3-year deal has a team option on the last year, right? So that's huge for OKC because Holmgren and Jalen Williams' contracts will be up around then, so then you can kind of make a decision on Hartenstein, right? And now you have this 2-year window where you could go ahead and maybe win a title. And how huge would that be for that Oklahoma City franchise who, has gotten close a couple times since moving there from Seattle, and now might be in a position more so than they've ever been to win the whole thing. Let's stay out east a little. Let's go back out east, I should say. Let's talk a little bit about Philly. So Philly was in a weird position this offseason, right? They had Joel Embiid. They likely thought they were going to keep Tyrese Maxey. Everybody else was expendable, which is crazy, right? So they let Tobias Harris go. He goes, signs a 2-year deal in Detroit. Enjoy your time. See you never, says Philly, right? They let Nick Batum walk. They let Paul Reed walk, and they had to start repiecing it. So they end up bringing back Kelly Oubre. They bring in Andre Drummond. But the big thing they wanted to do is get a third star, and they got it with Paul George. Paul George leaves LA, the Clippers, 4 years, $212 million max deal with the 76ers. On top of that, they also extend Tyrese Maxey for his rookie max, 5 years, $204 million, alongside Joel Embiid's max contract. The Sixers now are, of course, a force to be reckoned with in the East. You gotta wonder, though, Paul George, Joel Embiid, both have injury histories. How viable can it be? And we've seen this 3-player super team thing kind of fizzle out these last few years. The Clippers tried it with Kawhi, PG-13, and Russell Westbrook. That didn't work. The Suns are currently trying it with Bradley Beal, KD, and Devin Booker. The Nets tried it with Kyrie, Harden, and Durant. That didn't work. So a lot of times it doesn't work, and most times it seems to be it's a dynamic duo with a bunch of really good role players. That's what you saw. The 2 teams in the finals this year. You saw it with Dallas, with Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic, and you saw it in Boston with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. So, and then they had guys who just bought into as elite role players, and Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, and then of course on the Dallas side, PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, these guys. So that seems to be the way to do it now, but the Sixers are trying to prove otherwise, right? And they're formidable, right? But you got to wonder, if one injury hits one of the stars, how do they recoup? Do they have the depth? Are they going to be able to assemble enough talent and still keep it under the first and second aprons to maintain financial flexibility? Time will tell on that one, but I think right now you got to say that Boston, Philly, and New York are the top 3 contenders in the East, with Milwaukee kind of lurking right behind them alongside Cleveland and Orlando. We just talked about Dallas. They got better. They signed Klay Thompson. So The Warriors, their dynasty feels over right now, right? They lose the Splash Brother. One of the two pillars. There's basically three pillars of their franchise right now in a dynasty sense: Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green. They've lost one of those guys, and it kind of all stems back to the Jordan Poole stuff. And obviously, he's now in Washington, and it seems like they're going to be prioritizing the next step in developing Jonathan Kuminga, developing Moses Moody. In return, they brought in Buddy Hield, who was not retained by Philly. They brought in Kyle Anderson as well. So a couple vets that can shoot. It can defend a little bit in Anderson's case. And, they're going to try and maximize what's left of Steph Curry's prime. He's 35 years old, still playing at a very high level. But, you wonder how much longer before, the wheels kind of start falling off. It's the same problem that the Lakers have with LeBron James. For Dallas, they get an elite shooter, right? And last year was one of Klay's worst years shooting. He still shot 39% from three on 9 attempts per game. He's really good. He's one of the best three-point shooters we've ever seen. Period, point blank, end of sentence, right? So they lose Derrick Jones Jr., who signed with the Clippers, and they replace him with Klay Thompson. They lose Tim Hardaway Jr. in a trade, but they pick up Quentin Grimes, a basically younger version, cheaper version of Tim Hardaway Jr. To me, it's a huge win for Dallas. They got better. They got two guys who can shoot. Klay can't defend like he used to, but Grimes is an excellent on-ball defender on the wing. And when you have Luka and Kyrie, they're going to penetrate. Those corner threes are going to be open. Grimes, Thompson, they're going to be there to take those shots and make those shots. And I think Dallas is trying to maximize their window right now with Luka, as he is in his prime, and with what is left of Kyrie's prime. And they're trying to get back to the finals. It's incredibly clear that is what they're trying to do. Speaking of trying to get better, let's go back to Orlando. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope signs with the Magic. 3 years, $66 million. This is an interesting one because the Nuggets wanted to retain him, decided not to because of the first apron implications. The Lakers wanted to bring him in. He decides not to do that, and he goes to Orlando. And if you're KCP, this is a hand-in-glove fit. What did the Magic really need last year? Shooting. It's what doomed them against Cleveland in the playoffs, and it's what will continue to doom them if these guys can't make shots. So they bring in a guy who makes threes, takes threes, decent wing defender. The bigger thing here, though, is that KCP loss for Denver is massive. Again, Denver is continuing to lose players. They lost Bruce Brown after the title, and now they've lost Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. They're hoping that their young guys, Peyton Watson, those type of dudes, could come in and fill in the void, but that's going to be tough, and especially in the loaded Western Conference. So KCP and the Magic, I think that helps the Magic, potentially helps them win the playoff series this coming year. All right, let's talk a little trade. Last couple things here. So the Hawks, who had the first pick in the draft and selected Rhys Haché out of France, traded DeJounte Murray to the Pelicans. In return, they got Larry Nance Jr., Dyson Daniels, 2 first-round picks, one via the Lakers, one via the Bucks. Quite simply, guys, the DeJounte Murray thing didn't work, right? They tried to do this 2-guard thing with him and Trae Young. It didn't work, and it was kind of a your turn, my turn. Didn't win enough games. Just didn't seem to have any chemistry with one another. At times, we're not even playing on the floor at the same time as one another. They were kind of really staggering them, and Quinn Snyder really saw that. So they move off of DeJounte. They get Dyson Daniels as a project player who could turn into something for them. But it really feels like they're just kind of in a rebuilding around Trae situation, right? After the conference finals appearance in 2021, they kind of doubled down on all these guys, and not all of them have really panned out. They're probably going to move off of Capella here pretty soon. They got Josh Johnson, who seems to be a legit wing player in this league who could give them valuable minutes. They just drafted Rhys Haché. So you're hoping he develops into something. Dyson Daniels. So they have a lot of length. I think they're going to be one of the more fun teams to watch. Still feels like outside looking in on the play-in for this team. But, they could sneak into the 10 or 9 spot and, be in one of those play-in games, I think. As for the Pelicans, they get their point guard, right? And now you pair him with Zion Williamson, McCollum will theoretically still be on the team. I wonder if they're going to try and trade Brandon Ingram still. It seems like those two sides have irreparable damage, but you still have Trey Murphy. You got Herb Jones. You got a scary team that can make the playoffs in the West. The West is so loaded right now. You look at what the Pelicans have with Zion and DeJounte Murray and Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, and all these guys, and they might still be in the play-in, right? Even with all those guys. It's crazy. And that's just how deep the West is, especially with how the Spurs are getting better with Wembanyama, and the Rockets are getting better. The Lakers and Warriors are still kind of hanging around. The Memphis is going to be better with a fully healthy John Morant. The West is tough. It's a tough time to be in the Western Conference. So a lot easier, I think, to be in the Eastern Conference right now. All right, so let's close with the most recent transaction that happened, and that's DeMar DeRozan. DeRozan made it clear he wasn't coming back to Chicago. Chicago wants to rebuild. They're done with it, right? They're done with kind of this mediocre situation. You got to wonder what's going to happen with Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic. I would imagine those guys get traded, even though their trade value is incredibly low right now. But he signs with the Sacramento Kings. 3 years, $74 million. So there's a sign and trade with 3 teams. So Harrison Barnes goes to San Antonio, another veteran piece to add to Victor Wembanyama. That's going to make them better immediately. And you get Chris Duarte, former Indiana Pacer, plus 2 second-round picks going back to Chicago. So for Chicago, you get a young guard, you get some draft capital, which are probably good. You could probably use those to kind of attach to a LaVine trade or something like that, right? So DeRozan to the Kings makes them instantly better on offense. Doesn't do much for them defensively, but you get a late-game shot maker with De'Aaron Fox, with Sabonis. This team's going to be fun. I always say there's a couple teams every year that are must-watch on League Pass. The Kings are one of those teams, right? DeRozan is going to be vital for them come late-season moments, playoff moments, and they're probably not going to stop anybody defensively. They brought back Malik Monk. They, have a lot of these guys. They got rid of Davion Mitchell, who was one of their better defenders. And they're going to have to score 130 points to win games. They're going to be highly entertaining, right? And I think they'll be lighting the beam a bunch with DeRozan. DeRozan becomes their third option. And think about a guy who's as efficient from mid-range as he is, as clean as getting his shot as he is. That's a huge win for them. So super exciting stuff in the world of the NBA and free agency and all that. This upcoming season is going to be amazing. I can't wait for it, especially out west. The race for who's going to come out of the West is just going to be cutthroat, more so than we've seen in many years, I think. And I think some teams that really elevated, Sacramento elevated, Dallas got a lot better, New York got a lot better. A lot of Denver got worse, I think, because of all the other teams getting better, right? So I'm kind of curious to see how that kind of shakes out. Lakers stood pat. The Warriors probably taking a step back. And then you got these upstarts. San Antonio got a lot better. Houston's getting better. All these guys are improving. Orlando got a lot better by adding KCP. So it's going to be a super fascinating season. Can't wait for it to start in a few months. But that is going to wrap up another episode of the Deep Cover Podcast. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider following and subscribing and rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you are interested in any of my written pieces, you can catch those on omarzaran.medium.com and on offtheballnetwork.com. Currently working with the Off the Ball guys on a 30 and 30, so looking at the off season of all 30 NBA teams. The first 2, as of the time of this recording, are uploaded. That was covering Golden State and Houston so far. But be on the lookout for more team previews drop in there on offtheballnetwork.com. But until next time, I'm your host, Omar Zaran, and I'll see you later.